You've heard of the Tomahawk, the Patriot, the Minuteman, the missiles America put in silos, on submarines, under the wings of B-52s, the ones that worked, the ones that got built. But what about the ones that didn't? A cruise missile that could fly for weeks at Mach 3, 200 meters above the ground, leaving a radioactive trail like a flying Chernobyl. That was real. They almost tested it. An ICBM that lived on a train. A missile that locked onto a portable toilet. 9 programs, $400 billion, 8 decades. 0 deployed for combat, the cemetery. Let's go. Quick framing. We're not talking about napkin sketches or paper studies. We're talking about programs the Department of Defense fully funded. Programs that hit prototype hardware, that fired real test rounds, that got contracts signed by real generals, and then died. A canceled missile usually means one of 3 things. Politics killed it, the threat changed, or it just didn't work. Sometimes all 3 at once. What survives is the wreckage. Test articles in a hangar, engineering reports stamped terminated, bills that taxpayers paid for missiles that never went anywhere. The list runs from 1957 to today. Ground tested, flight tested, prototype deployed, canceled. We're going in order. Oldest to newest. We'll end with the program that was supposed to put 4,000 weapons in orbit. Pay attention to the dollar amounts. By the end, you're going to have a number in your head the Pentagon really doesn't like saying out loud. Number 1, Project Pluto, supersonic low-altitude missile, 1957 to 64. This was a cruise missile the size of a locomotive, 26 meters long, 27,000 kilograms. The engine was a nuclear ramjet, an unshielded reactor with ceramic fuel elements, glowing red hot, pulling air directly through the core. The flight profile was insane. Solid rocket boosters get it airborne. Then the reactor lights. Mach 3, altitude 150 meters. For weeks, the payload was 16 thermonuclear warheads. SLAM would fly across the Soviet Union, dropping them one at a time, until it was empty. Then it would keep flying. The shockwave alone, Mach 3 at low altitude, would burst eardrums and kill livestock. The radioactive exhaust would scatter fallout across every kilometer it passed over. The missile was its own bonus weapon. Wild trivia. The reactor, the Tory IIC, ran at full power in the Nevada desert in 1964. 5 minutes, it worked. The test was a success. After the test, the reactor was so radioactive that nobody could get near it. It was buried where it sat. Project Pluto was canceled July 64. ICBMs got cheaper, and the engineers building it had started asking a question the Pentagon couldn't answer. What happens to us when we use it? Skybolt, air-launched ballistic missile, 1959 to 62. The concept was elegant. A B-52 carries 4 of them on underwing pylons, climbs to 12 kilometers, releases 2 solid fuel stages light. The missile flies 1,800 kilometers and delivers a 1 megaton warhead. The bombers stay in the air. They launch from anywhere over the Atlantic. Soviet air defenses can't reach them. Britain bet everything on this. They canceled their own missile, Blue Streak. They ordered 144 Skybolts. Their entire nuclear deterrent depended on the United States delivering 1 weapon. The first 5 test flights failed. All of them. December 62. Robert McNamara cancels the program. The British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, finds out from the newspapers. The diplomatic crisis was immediate. 9 days later, Kennedy meets Macmillan in Nassau. Britain demands compensation. They get it. America hands Britain the Polaris submarine missile, fully operational. The Royal Navy gets a nuclear deterrent. It is still operational today as Trident. Wild trivia. The 6th and final Skybolt test, 2 days after the program was canceled, flew perfectly. A clean launch, a successful trajectory. By then, the contracts were already shredded. Skybolt killed itself by working too late. AIM-152, Advanced Air-to-Air Missile, 1988 to 92. Job description: replace the Phoenix on the F-14 Tomcat. The Phoenix could hit a Soviet bomber at 190 kilometers. AIM was supposed to hit one at 240. The specs were science fiction for 1990. Range 240 kilometers. Speed Mach 4 plus. Active radar guidance in the terminal phase, meaning the missile finds the target on its own. Two prototypes competed. Hughes with a clever solid rocket plus ramjet combination. General Dynamics and Westinghouse with a twin-stage solid. Neither flew. The problem wasn't the missile. The problem was the airplane carrying it. F-14 modernization budget was already collapsing. The Tomcat was an expensive jet from the 70s, kept alive on cannibalized spare parts. Throwing $2 billion at a missile to extend its life made no sense to a Pentagon planning the F-14's retirement. Wild trivia. The same concept came back in 2024. The Navy now flies the AEM-174B on FA-18s. Range 200-plus kilometers, Mach 3 plus. Active terminal guidance. Same missile, 30 years later, different airplane. AM was right. We just had the wrong plane. Quick question. Would you rather build a missile that never works, like Skybolt, or one that works perfectly but gets canceled when its airplane retires, like AM? Drop your answer below. There's a no right one. ASALM, Advanced Strategic Air-Launched Missile, 1976-80. Concept: replace the short-range attack missile, the SRAM, on every B-52 and B-1B in the inventory. The trick was an integral rocket ramjet motor, solid booster and ramjet sustainer in the same combustion chamber. No separate stages, no transition. The same hardware burns twice. Test launches from a B-52 began 79, 7 flights total. On flight number 6, the missile reached Mach 5.5 at 13 kilometers altitude, not as a peak, sustained for over 40 seconds. This is full hypersonic flight from a missile built in 1980. The telemetry was so far outside the predicted envelope that the test range had trouble tracking it. The Pentagon canceled it that same year. Why? The cheaper alternative was already in production. The AGM-86 ALCM, subsonic, stealthy by 1980 standards, was being delivered in quantity. ASAM was better, faster, harder to intercept. It was also more expensive. The B-52 fleet was getting a missile that worked. Nobody at the table wanted to write the check for the missile that worked better. Wild trivia. America had a working hypersonic cruise missile in 1980. We're now spending $50 billion to build the same thing. The Sergeant York DVAD, Division Air Defense, 1977-85. Technically, it wasn't a missile system. It was a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. But it was funded as part of the same missile defense doctrine, and the story is too good to skip. DVAD took an M48 Patton tank chassis, bolted on a turret with twin 40mm Bofors cannons, added a Westinghouse air defense radar in a radome, wrote a fire control computer that married the radar to the guns. Job: shoot down Soviet attack helicopters, specifically the Mi-24 Hind and the Su-25 Frogfoot. Defend U.S. armored divisions in the Fulda Gap. In 1981, Ford Aerospace delivered the prototype to the Pentagon. The demonstration was held at Aberdeen Proving Ground in front of senior officers. The radar locked on. The turret rotated, and it slewed straight toward the reviewing stand. Engineers later determined the radar had locked onto a portable toilet downwind of the test site. The rotating fan on top of the porta potty produced a radar return roughly consistent with helicopter rotor blades. The guns did not fire only because they were not loaded. It got worse. 3 more years of testing. Hit rate against a hovering target drone, 17%. Hit rate against a real helicopter in operational conditions, 0%. Caspar Weinberger personally attended a demonstration in 1985. The Army loaded the system, presented a target. Sergeant York missed 3 times in a row. The Secretary of Defense canceled the program 2 months later. 50 units already built. Most ended up on a firing range as targets for other weapons. $1.8 billion, canceled by a porta potty. TSM, Tri-Service Standoff Attack Missile, 1986-94. This was the stealth cruise missile before there was JASSM. The classified version, the one the Pentagon really wanted, built by Lockheed. Subsonic, low observable, designed to slip through Soviet integrated air defense and hit hardened bunkers. The same shape language as the F-117 and B-2. faceted skin, radar-absorbent material, launched from B-52, F-16, F-15E, FA-18, and a planned Army MLRS variant. The program stayed black until '90. Then someone in the Air Force put it in a congressional briefing. The unit cost was projected at $728,000 per missile. By '94, the projection was $2 million per missile. Three services wanted three different missiles. The Air Force wanted a long-range strike weapon. The Navy wanted ship-launched variant. The Army wanted MLRS pods. Every change request added cost. The thing being designed by committee was three different things. Canceled, December '94. $2 billion already spent. 0 combat missiles delivered. Wild trivia. JASSM started development the next month. Single service, Air Force lead, target unit cost $400,000. Same concept, different organizational structure. JASSM today, 2026, is in service with 24 countries. Over 6,000 have been delivered. Used in Syria, Iraq, Yemen. It is on the wing of every F-35 buyer's airplane. TSSM didn't fail technically. It failed because 3 services tried to design one weapon. JASSM proved you can do it. You just have to let one service own it. Midgetman, the small intercontinental ballistic missile, 1986 to 92. The Peacekeeper was the big ICBM, 96 tons, 10 warheads, locked in a hardened silo. Midgetman was the opposite, 17 tons, 1 warhead, road mobile. The concept was survivability through dispersion. 1,000 midgetmen scattered across the American West, riding on bespoke armored launchers. In a crisis, they roll. Soviet intelligence can't target what it can't find. The launcher was a 92-ton truck, 8-wheeled, armored to survive a nuclear airburst overhead at 30 psi overpressure. When stationary, it would lower itself onto a hardened pad and bolt to bedrock. The crew capsule was rated for chemical and biological attack. The vehicle could navigate cross-country at 40 kilometers per hour. The missile rode in a sealed canister that doubled as the launch tube. Cold launch from horizontal. Gas generator pops the missile clear. First stage ignites at altitude. Single W-87 warhead. 300 kilotons. Accuracy 90 meters at 11,000 kilometers. First and only flight test, April 1991. The missile pitched over 14 seconds into the boost phase. Range safety officer terminated it. Wreckage scattered across the Pacific. 6 weeks later, the Cold War ended. Bush canceled the program in January '92. Wild trivia. $44 billion authorized. $7 billion actually spent. 1 launch, 1 failure, 0 missiles deployed. The launcher trucks were stored for years and then sold for scrap. The Soviet Union collapsed faster than the Pentagon could build a road mobile ICBM. That's the only reason we don't have one today. Pause here. The next 2 programs are the biggest ones in the cemetery. Together, they cost more than every program we've covered so far. The first one was supposed to be invisible. The second one was supposed to be in orbit. The Peacekeeper missile was real. It was built. It was deployed. From '86 to 2005, 50 Peacekeepers sat in fixed silos in Wyoming. That's not the story. The story is where they were originally supposed to live. Part 1. Multiple Protective Shelter, MPS. The Shell Game. 1979, Carter administration. The plan was 200 Peacekeepers, each with 23 hardened shelters spread across the deserts of Utah and Nevada. Total 4,600 shelters. Each missile moves between its 23 shelters on a randomized schedule. Soviet intelligence can never know which shelter holds a real missile. The targeting math was beautiful. A first strike would require 23 Soviet warheads per Peacekeeper. Total warheads needed 4,600. The Soviet Union didn't have that many. It was the most expensive land acquisition project in American history. $40 billion in 1980 dollars, roughly $130 billion in 2026. It got killed by Mormons. The Latter-day Saints Church publicly opposed the program. Most of the proposed shelter sites were on church-influenced lands in Utah. For the first time in modern history, the LDS Church took an official position against a Department of Defense program. The Reagan administration canceled MPS in October '81. 6 months in, $2 billion already spent on environmental studies and land surveys. 4,000 pebbles in overlapping orbits guarantee that every point on Earth is covered by at least 3 of them at any moment. Estimated deployment cost, $60 billion. For context, NASA's total budget in 1990 was $13 billion. Ground testing of pebble prototypes was conducted at Livermore in '91. The sensor head and the kinetic impactor both worked in isolation on the ground. The space test never happened. Clinton canceled the program in May 1993. Too expensive. Technically unproven. The Soviet Union had collapsed. There was no ICBM threat the program was designed to stop. Wild trivia. Brilliant Pebbles came back in May 2025. Trump's executive order created the Golden Dome program, specifically described as a space-based interceptor constellation. Same concept, different decade, different name. A program that died because the threat went away is now being revived because the threat came back. $30 billion on the entire SDI umbrella, $8 billion specifically on Brilliant Pebbles. 0 Pebbles launched, 0 interceptors deployed. The smartest weapon America never put in space. Added up. Pluto, Skybolt, ARAM, ASAM, Sergeant York, TSSAM, Midget Man, Peacekeeper basing modes. Brilliant Pebbles, 9 programs, $400 billion, 8 decades, 0 weapons deployed for combat. Here's what nobody tells you. This is how American military research actually works. For every Tomahawk and every Patriot and every Minuteman that became real, there are 9 more in the graveyard. The canceled programs are how we paid for the ones that worked. The Pentagon calls it research and development. Critics call it waste. The truth is in between. None of these programs were stupid. All of them solved real problems. Most were killed by politics, not engineering. The Cold War is over. The cemetery is still growing. We just don't know yet which programs of today end up in it. The Pentagon currently has 17 active hypersonic weapons programs. Statistically, 14 of them won't fly. Truth in steel. See you next time.